يشارك فيه ما يقارب 1500 طالب ضابط عامل يتحركون بانضباط ودقة لتشكيل رتبة ملازم تعبيرا عن.
With Radio Algeria International, you will not miss a single major political or economic event. Radio Algeria International, our voice in the world.
This is the English service of Radio Algeria International. It's time for the news.
As you followed live from the city of Sharshel, the President of the Republic, Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces and Minister of National Defense, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, has presided over the graduation of the 2025 promotion of the cadets of the nation. In other top stories, Prime Minister Nadir Al-Arbawi has inaugurated the Algerian National Day at the World Expo Osaka 2025 in Japan. And the A3 Plus group in the UN Security Council, including Algeria, has said that an immediate and lasting ceasefire in the Gaza Strip is a prerequisite for the de-escalating violence in Yemen. Hello and welcome to Radio Algeria International. As you were following live, the President of the Republic, Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces and Minister of National Defense, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, has presided over the graduation ceremony of the 2025 promotions of the Sharshel Military Academy. President Tebboune has followed sports and group parades performed by the graduated promotions wearing the colors of the national flag. The parade included bodybuilding demonstrations in addition to performances by various sports groups including Kung Fu and Karate, among others. Let's recall that yesterday Army General Saeed Chingriha, Deputy Minister to the Minister of National Defense, Chief of Staff of the People's National Army, visited the Sharshel Military Academy on the eve of the annual graduation. On the occasion, he urged the officers of the graduating classes, as well as all Algerian youth, to return to the values of the glorious November Revolution, keeping them in mind and putting them into practice in the field.
Building a strong and impregnable Algeria capable of overcoming challenges and obstacles require a return to the principles of the glorious November Revolution, which is an inexhaustible source of inspiration that guides like a beacon the faithful sons of the country along the path of construction, development, and the implementation of the requirements of power and strategic progress. Therefore, you cadet officers and all young Algerians must engrave these values in your hearts and keep them in your minds, ensuring their implementation on the ground in the service of the country and its supreme interests.
وحرصكم الصادق على رفعة هذا الوطن مشاريع تنموية كبرى مبادرات شبابية واعدة كلها شواهد حية على عهد جديد يبنى بجيل جديد بسواعد الجزائريين وبقيادتكم الحكيمة.
Let's recall that the graduation ceremony of the 2025 promotions of the Sharshel Military Academy is continuing, and you can continue watching live right now. Now, the Minister of State in charge of Foreign Affairs, the National Community Abroad and African Affairs, Ahmed Attaf, has signed in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, the Act of Accession of Algeria to the Treaty of Amity and Cooperation in Southeast Asia on the first day of the 58th session of the Council of Foreign Ministers of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN. More details with Mohammed Khatil.
The signing of this act marks the official launch of an institutional partnership between Algeria and ASEAN, in line with the vision and guidelines of the President of the Republic, aimed at opening up more to the major Asian blocs given their growing geopolitical and economic weight. This partnership between Algeria and ASEAN should give a new collective dimension to the long-standing bilateral relations of friendship that Algeria has maintained with the countries of Southeast Asia in terms of strengthening political coordination and economic cooperation. On the political front, Algeria has always shared the values and principles enshrined in the ASEAN Treaty of Amity and Cooperation, principles on which the Algerian foreign policy is based, as Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf recalled in his speech at the signing ceremony.
Algeria is committed to working alongside ASEAN in advocating for the values of peace, mutual respect, and genuine cooperation. Algeria is also committed to joining hands with ASEAN in promoting respect for international law, including the principles of the Treaty of Amity and Cooperation. And Algeria is finally committed to closely coordinating with ASEAN toward ensuring that diplomacy takes precedence over confrontation, that law triumphs over force, and that multilateralism prevails over unilateralism. This is the only way forward to achieve a peaceful and prosperous future for all mankind.
With this in mind, the formalization of cooperation relations between Algeria and ASEAN will enable both parties to strengthen bilateral coordination on the international stage with a view to promoting the rules of international law, defending the values of peace, justice, and mutual respect, and consolidating multilateralism, particularly in a global context marked by increasing recourse to force in international relations, the violation of international law, and the gradual marginalization of the United Nations system. On the economic front, this new stage will pave the way for promising partnership opportunities between Algeria and ASEAN, considered one of the most successful models of regional integration in the world, given that it is the fifth largest economy and the third largest market in the world.
On the sidelines of the signing ceremony, Mr. Ahmed Attaf held bilateral talks on Thursday in Kuala Lumpur with his counterpart from Lao People's Democratic Republic. The meeting provided an opportunity to examine ways and means of strengthening bilateral relations between Algeria and Laos in light of their common struggle against colonialism and their converging positions on just causes around the world. Prime Minister Nadir Al-Arbawi has inaugurated the Algerian National Day at the World Expo Osaka 2025 in Japan. He reviewed the comprehensive reforms led by President Abdelmadjid Tebboune to improve the investment climate, which has allowed for a qualitative leap despite difficult international political and economic conditions, as evidenced by the achievement of the highest growth rates in the last 13 years. Mr. Al-Arbawi said that the Algerian-Japanese cooperation occupies a very special place in the relations between the two countries, which are a model of constructive communication, fruitful cooperation, and mutual solidarity.
Algeria's participation in this international exhibition is an affirmation of its full commitment to engage positively in these spaces designed to promote dialogue, consolidate openness, and strengthen communication between different cultures and civilizations. These are values that Algeria has always sought to defend in international forums, as reflected in its initiative that led to 16th May of each year being designated by the United Nations as the International Day of Living Together in Peace. Under the leadership of the President of the Republic, Abdelmadjid Tebboune, Algeria works constantly to support efforts to establish peace and security at the regional and international levels, and always favors political solutions, categorically rejecting interference in the internal affairs of states or violation of their sovereignty, ideals and principles that Algeria promotes as a non-permanent member of the Security Council alongside its friend Japan, which also held this seat during the 2023-2024 biennium.
Mr. Al-Arbawi said that this movement is gaining momentum thanks to various funding and accompaniment mechanisms and a package of tax and non-tax incentives aimed at promoting investment and innovation, as well as the initiative to establish a continental dynamic through the African Startup Conference hosted annually by Algeria, which has become a continental platform to exchange experiences and unify efforts to support innovation.
In terms of economic development, my country, which since the 1970s has been at the forefront of calls for the establishment of a fair and equitable international economic order, continues to advocate for the construction of a more democratic and open international system in which developing countries enjoy a favorable position and in which efforts are joined to address common challenges. Algerian-Japanese cooperation is of great importance in our bilateral relations, which are a model of constructive communication and fruitful cooperation. This solidarity dates back to the glorious National Liberation Revolution and the establishment of a partnership based on mutual respect and common interest, which has enabled both friendly countries, despite the distance that separates them, to take significant steps in building a fruitful partnership that has led to the implementation of numerous projects.
That was Prime Minister Nadir Al-Arabawi. Now, the Algerian Petroleum Institute, a subsidiary of the Sonatrach Group, has received the OPEC Award for the Best Research Institute in the field of energy for the year 2025. The award ceremony took place on the sidelines of the 9th OPEC Forum held in Australian capital Vienna. In his speech on the occasion, the OPEC Secretary General praised the Algerian Petroleum Institute, which he described as a prestigious institution that has trained students who have gone on to hold high positions in their countries, some of them even holding ministerial portfolios. Algeria is taking part in the 9th International Seminar of the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, Vienna, Austria, under the theme Charting the Way Forward Together, the Future of Global Energy. This was said in a statement by the Ministry of Energy, Mines and Renewable Energy, Said Bouazi reports.
During its participation, the Algerian delegation reaffirmed Algeria's commitment to strengthening dialogue and international cooperation to address global challenges in the energy sector and achieve a just, inclusive, and sustainable energy transition, taking into account the specificities of developing countries and ensuring energy security for all. On the sidelines of the seminar, the delegation members held bilateral meetings with officials from international energy companies with the aim of strengthening cooperation and partnership relations. They met with representatives of the American company Chevron, with whom they reviewed the implementation of the Memorandum of Understanding signed with Sonatrach for the development of hydrocarbon resources in Algeria. They also met with representatives of the Spanish company Cepsa, with whom they reaffirmed the importance of the joint green hydrogen production project. Meetings were also held with officials from the Omani company OQ and the Austrian company OMV to explore opportunities for cooperation in the fields of exploration, production, petrochemicals, and gas infrastructure development. For its part, Sonatrach took part in the exhibition organized on the sidelines of the seminar, where it showcased its technical capabilities, expertise, and future projects. Algeria's participation in this international event demonstrates its commitment to continuing to play a key role in the global energy market, working to develop effective and profitable partnerships and consolidating its position as a reliable energy supplier.
As part of the implementation of the instructions of the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, to support Syria in the field of electricity, the technical team of Sonalgaz held a series of meetings with officials from the General Electricity Administration in Syria. During a visit to Syria, Sonalgaz discussed broad cooperation in the electricity sector, proposed a memorandum of understanding, and identified key support areas such as training, maintenance, and system rehabilitation. The visit ended with both sides affirming their commitment to a strategic energy partnership. Now to the Western Sahara file. The president of the National Observatory of the Civil Society, Ms. Ibtisam Hamlawi, has underlined in Mustaghanim, here in Algeria, in her closing speech at the Festival of Sahrawi Women, in the presence of the Minister of Culture of the Sahrawi Republic, Musa Selma Labid, that Sahrawi women are the memory of the resistance and the identity of a people who have not forgotten their just cause and have not renounced the right to self-determination and the foundation of their independent state. Meanwhile, Adela UK, a human rights organisation based in the United Kingdom, has strongly condemned the latest expulsion of international observers from Western Sahara by Moroccan occupation authorities. On Tuesday, Moroccan forces detained and deported 2 Spanish journalists and human rights activists who had entered the territory to document ongoing human rights violations against the Sahrawi people. This incident brings the total number of international observers expelled from the region to over 330, according to Adela UK's data. The details with Mohammed Khatil.
The 3 expelled individuals were identified as Leonor Suarez, a journalist from Asturias, Oscar Allende, director of the independent media outlet El Faradio, and Raúl Conde, a member of the solidarity organization Cantabria por el Sahara. They were intercepted at a checkpoint on the outskirts of Al Ayoun, the capital of the occupied territory. According to first-hand testimonies obtained by Adala UK, plainclothes Moroccan officers declared them personas non gratas and forcibly escorted them by 4 secret police vehicles to Agadir inside Morocco. Adala UK asserts this expulsion is part of a deliberate and systematic campaign by Moroccan authorities to block access to the territory and silence critical reporting. Raúl Conde confirmed that officers gave no reason for the expulsion, only orders to leave. Sidi Ahmed Liadassi, president of Adala UK, stated that Morocco wants the world to remain blind to the situation in Western Sahara. By expelling journalists and human rights defenders, they are attempting to isolate the Sahrawi people from international solidarity and scrutiny. Adala UK and the expelled observers emphasize that this action constitutes a violation of multiple fundamental rights, including freedom of expression, freedom of movement, and most critically, the right of the Sahrawi people to receive and impart information as guaranteed under Article 19 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights.
Still with the Sahrawi file, the Sahrawi Observatory for Natural Resources and Environmental Protection has welcomed Australia's official termination of phosphate rock imports from the occupied territories of Western Sahara, considering it a landmark step towards ending involvement in an ethically and legally problematic trade. Sharfi Masoud.
The observatory considered Australia's withdrawal from importing phosphate from occupied Western Sahara a necessary step towards compliance with international law. SONREP urged all governments and companies, particularly in New Zealand, India, Mexico and Japan, to end their involvement in the unlawful exploitation of Sahrawi resources and to respect international legal and human rights standards. The Polisario Front's representative in Australia, Kamal Fadel, speaking to our colleague Hakima Dahbi, hailed the halt of phosphate imports as a major victory for the Sahrawi cause, highlighting it as proof of the legitimacy of their struggle and the impact of diplomatic pressure.
The decision by Australian companies to end the import of phosphate from Western Sahara is a direct result of a strong and coordinated pressure campaign led by the representative office of the Polisario Front in Australia, in cooperation with the Australian Western Sahara Association and the International Observatory for Western Sahara Natural Resources. We consider this withdrawal an important victory for our national cause and evidence of the justness of the Sahrawi people's struggle and the effectiveness of political and diplomatic action in imposing respect for international law. This decision also confirms that victory and the completion of national sovereignty are inevitable and that the Moroccan occupation will inevitably come to an end.
Earlier, Adala UK, a UK-based human rights organization, welcomed the decision, calling it a milestone in the Sahrawi people's struggle, and noting that it followed years of civil society pressure and aligns with international law and corporate responsibility standards. Citing EU court rulings, Adala UK reaffirmed that trade in Western Sahara requires the consent of its people and viewed the closure of Dino Noble's Geelong facility as the end of Australia's role in a conflict-linked trade.
Now, the members of the A3+ group in the UN Security Council, including Algeria, Somalia, Sierra Leone and Guyana, have affirmed that an immediate and lasting ceasefire in the Gaza Strip is a prerequisite for de-escalating the violence in Yemen. Speaking on behalf of the A3+ at a meeting on the situation in Yemen in New York, a member of Somalia's permanent mission to the UN, Mohammed Rabi Yusuf, said that the situation in the Palestinian enclave is closely linked to tensions in the Red Sea.
The A3 is deeply concerned by recent developments in Yemen and the broader region. The recent escalations between the Houthis and Israel is especially alarming and will have far-reaching implications for international peace. We condemn all violations of international law and stress that these tensions are closely linked to the unresolved conflict in Gaza. We also underscore the need to secure an immediate and permanent ceasefire in Gaza. Not only will this alleviate the suffering in the occupied Palestinian territory, but will prevent further escalations and spillovers across the region.
On another level, the A3+ group drew attention to the seriousness of the humanitarian and health situation in Yemen, particularly with the spread of a number of diseases, calling for the unhindered of humanitarian aid throughout the country. For his part, the special envoy of the UN Secretary General for Yemen, Hans Grundenberg, has shed light on the serious food insecurity in Yemen, and insisted on the importance of dialogue and peace for the best interest of the Yemeni people and the region.
Across Yemen, the little money people do have in their pockets is either falling in value or literally falling apart. Concern among citizens and across the private sector over the dire countrywide economic situation is increasing. Also increasing, tragically, is the food insecurity and threat of famine. The economy has, in effect, become the most active frontline. But as I have said before, the economy is an area where practical collaboration between the parties can create meaningful change and immediately and positively impact the lives of Yemenis. In recent weeks, we've welcomed the opening of the Al Dali Road that has increased freedom of movement and expanded avenues for economic activity. This demonstrates what is possible.
That was the special envoy of the UN Secretary General for Yemen, Hans Grundenberg. More than 15,000 Palestinian students have been killed since the start of the barbaric Zionist attacks on the Gaza Strip on the 7th of October 2023, according to UN agencies relaying a report from the Palestinian Education Authorities. According to a tally made on the 1st of July, the Palestinian Ministry of Education indicates that at least 15,811 students and 703 members of the educational staff have been killed, while 23,612 students and 315 members of the educational staff have been injured, many of them suffering lifelong physical or psychological consequences. Said Bougazi has more details.
According to the UN sectoral group in charge of education, these figures highlight the devastating impact of the Zionist aggression on the education sector, particularly on students and staff, underlining that this seriously undermines efforts to maintain and restore safe learning environments for children. Furthermore, attacks on schools continue to cause additional damage to the already fragile educational infrastructure. During the period covered by the report of the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, OCHA, between 22nd June and 5th July 2025, 14 attacks on schools were recorded, affecting 11 public schools and 3 schools run by the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, UNRWA. In 2 weeks, 7 displacement orders forced the suspension of more than 40 functional temporary learning spaces supported by 447 teachers and serving approximately 15,000 learners, while 85 others closed, disrupting access to learning for more than 33,000 learners. Added to this is a severe fuel and water shortage that continues to disrupt education efforts in Gaza, in addition to recurring internet connectivity outages that limit Palestinian children's opportunities for distance learning. Last May, the United Nations Children's Fund UNICEF estimated that more than 50,000 Palestinian children had been killed or injured in Gaza since the start of the Zionist attacks on the Palestinian enclave on 7th October 2023.
You're still listening to Radio Algeria International. Let's just recall today's major event here in Algeria, in Cherchell, west of Algiers, the graduation ceremony of the 2025 promotions of the Cherchell military, which is chaired or being chaired by the President of the Republic, Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces and Minister of National Defense, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune. Let's say that maneuvers, drills and parades are high on the agenda and are taking place in today's graduation ceremony.
رمزنا قد خط فيه